This is Greg Feynman with UOR Investigations Paranormal, and it is May 25th, 2023, about 10:40 in the morning, and I just wanted to intro the third interview I did on KCRT Radio, and there's one thing I didn't get to talk about. I talked about Oma, but I didn't get to talk about one of the things they told me, and we'll talk about that after the interview. I'll talk about it. All right, so enjoy the interview.
Eli in the studio. Joining me once again is UOR Paranormal Investigation founder, Mr. Greg Feynman. Greg, welcome to another edition of FYI, sir.
Well, how you doing, Eli?
I'm doing really good, Greg. You've been on the FYI program now a couple of times. You mentioned that you were a medic and a police officer. You're the new founder of UOR Paranormal Investigation Team. What has transpired since the last that we spoke, sir?
Well, actually a lot, but I really wanted to talk a little bit about what I didn't get to say about Oma, or Sasquatch, that we learned about them during this investigation. I thought it's important to let everyone know what we've learned about them. First of all, Oma was a name that was given to them by the Native Americans a long time ago. And it works because you can describe an Oma as plural or singular. Like, I saw an Oma running through the forest, or, I saw several Oma running through it, so it kind of works. But they are telepathic, okay, and that's how we're talking to them. And we asked them one day if they were aware when our friends in the sky came and took the cows. But our friends in the sky answered that question for them. And Friends in the Sky told us that Oma is planetless. The Greys brought them from a planet that was destroyed long ago. I don't know how long ago, just long ago, to live here interdimensionally. All right? They went through a similar selection process is what we'll be going through. Only the good ones went, and they had to have a certain belief, and they were taken from many parts of a planet. So there's as many races of Oma as there are people. Oma, they serve the Greys out of gratitude, all right, for getting them off the planet, all right? And the Greys do have a rule for Oma, and the rule is they're not allowed to hurt human beings. That's one of the rules, the primary rule. And I kind of find it interesting that the Greys were observing a planet that was destroyed, that they were able to get beings off of it. And then here the Greys are here observing our planet. I mean, food for thought, I'll tell you that Oma has a collective thought, and I believe it is limited to race. I don't know if it's every Oma or if it's just the race, but they have a collective thought. What happens to one happens to them all. Okay? They can see infrared. They've told us that. And we are in contact with a family of 5 of them. And the alpha male that we're in contact, he claims to be over 1,000 years old. That's what he's telling us. One thing I didn't know, and this happened on the last time we were out there, is Oma can manipulate our EMF meters. They're in some plane where they can do it, and it was a total shock to me.
Greg, let's turn the page back, if you will. In the beginning of the investigation into the cattle mutilations, the UBDs, your psychic, Mama Sue Gutierrez, said that the ones responsible for the cattle mutilations are watching you and trying to stop your investigations. You felt like while you were on the porch, you were being watched, so you started filming and narrating your feelings. You asked for a sign and you received one. Share with our listeners, if you will, about that sign that you received.
Okay, well, first of all, Fitz we're in contact with Fitz that they are here for our own good. First of all, they're not trying to hurt me or screw up my investigation. It's another tribe that is trying to mess up my investigation. But that being said, Mama Sue did tell me that the ones that are responsible for those cattle mutilations, Greg, well, they're well aware of you and your little investigation. And if you ever feel like you're watched, boy, you are being watched. And one day, I felt like I was being watched. It was overwhelming. And I pulled out my camera and I started filming. And I started talking to the camera. I was telling them how I felt. And then finally, I said, well, come on, guys. What can you do for me this second that can prove to me that you're watching me? Anything. Like a big old lightning striker right in front of me. Blah! Lightning strike right square in front of me. And I mean, no thunder attached to it. It was the weakest lightning strike I ever saw. It was so weak that I had to put a filter on it, on the video, called glowing edges. And it basically bolted out the edges of everything so I could see the lightning strike better. And when I did that, I saw orbs flying in, coming, in that video. And they were definitely orbs. And when I asked Fitz, when we asked them, what is an orb and how does it relate to you guys? Because we saw them just before the lightning strike. Couldn't have been a coincidence. They said that an orb is spirit energy. And they called upon that energy to create my lightning strike.
You're talking about Fitz. If you're not familiar from our last interview, Fitz is Friends in the Sky. Greg, I have to ask you, you spoke about some unusual circumstances with Mama Sue and yourself. How dangerous has these investigations become to you?
Well, I wasn't expecting or prepared, but not really prepared, but I wasn't going to talk about that, but we can. Something happened to Mama Sue. She called me one day and said that she was taken by that reptilian tribe. She said that there was a reptilian that was about 6'2", broad at the shoulders, and it was holding on to her right arm really roughly. She said that it had 3 fingers and a thumb, and it was talking to her in clicks of the tongue and vocalizations that she wasn't aware of, but she knew it was mad at her for whatever reason. She said that either the ship she was on or the room she was in had 8 sides to it. It was octagonal.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and Fitz told her, because she didn't remember this part, Fitz told her that they had to board that ship to get her off of it, and when they did, they had her hanging upside down by her left foot. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but she gets put back, and she looks at her arm and her foot, and that's what you see. There's no way she could have done this to herself. There's no way she could have done this to herself. And so it's getting dangerous. Something happened to me just on the 17th. I wasn't going to talk about that, but it's pretty interesting. I went missing.
That's what I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
Your encounter, what you told us before the interview actually started.
Yeah, I walked into my garage, and there were 2 friends of mine that were a friend of mine and her daughter, and they were in the farthest part of the garage where the door is. And they had their belongings there. And I walked into that garage from my basement coming from my house. So I came in from the top side of the garage, and I walked around the Jeep all the way up to where they were at. And they looked at me, and they asked me a question, and they looked away. And when they looked back at me, they were looking in amazement, like total amazement. And I didn't know what they were looking at. They're like, Greg. I'm like, what? And they're like, you were just taken. You weren't there. Greg, unless you ran out of the room and then ran back when we didn't see it in the split second that we turned our head, you were taken. I made a comment because something was on my mind, because she had told me that, and she said something else, and I had something else on my mind, and I was thinking about something like I hope they pick up my trash tomorrow. And she's like, Greg, I just got done telling you were taken, and you're thinking about your trash? And I'm like, yeah, I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's when the paranormal becomes the normal. When this stuff that's happening is normal for me. It's new to them. It freaked them out. I mean, they were freaked out. All right, but it was new to me. It wasn't new to me. It's happened before.
After thousands of hours of work, including stakeouts, videos, interviews, podcast, TV, what conclusion have you come to so far in your investigations, Greg?
The conclusion of everything, if you believe anything that I've been saying, the conclusion is that we're in end times. And we don't have very long. Our time is short. And the conclusion is that everyone needs to get right with God. That's coming from Fitz telling us that. Get right with God. That Jesus is going to be coming, that we need to develop a personal relationship with him, because it's all, everything is based not only is it more important now to be a good person than ever, is what they're saying, but it's your personal relationship with Christ. And that's coming from Fitz, and people, we should be telling them about God, but they're telling us and to know God. And that's the only thing they can tell the people to save themselves from what's going to be happening, because something will be happening and our time is very short. We don't have long.
Cows that have had ears, udder, eyes, sex organs removed, drained of blood, no tracks, no footprints, no scavengers in the near vicinity. Are we anywhere ahead of investigating than we were 40 years ago?
Well,
do you believe?
That's a tough question.
You've made significant progress just in your, how many years now have you been doing the UOR?
Well, with this ranch, over 2 years now.
2 years.
We've been on the ranch. And we've learned a lot. Like I said, we've learned a lot. And, I don't know what every others have come, what their conclusion they've come to that is investigated the cattle mutilations. I don't know. I'm not. I had my own ideas on how I wanted to investigate this, and because everyone was scratching their heads, I didn't want to look and see how everyone was doing theirs. All right, for one reason, because if I'm come up with an idea on something, I don't want to have them say that I was using their idea or whatever. If I don't look at any investigation and I go in this with my own ideas on how I want to investigate this, no one can say or hint that I'm using their idea, because that kind of happened. I was because I said that I was checking cows with a black light looking for markings. And this person said, well, what frequency was the black light? I was like, the Amazon.com frequency? I don't know. The one that it just tells me if there's markings on the cow, it's not about the frequency. She goes, well, this person said, you didn't know that, I don't know what the doctor's name, John Jacob Boomerheimer Schmidt did it in 1970? And I was like, no, what they do. But it wasn't checking the cows for markings, so I don't know what the deal was. But I said, well, that's why I haven't looked into the investigation, because this person was kind of thought that it was crazy that I didn't look into other investigations, and I told her that your attitude towards me on that was that last round there was the whole reason why I didn't look into anyone else's investigation, because I don't want anyone saying I was riding off their coattails or coming off of any of their ideas or their conclusions or anything. These are our conclusions.
You always have a sense of calm, and you seem to be shielded from harm and danger. What do you attribute that to?
God. 100% God.
Because you've encountered some precarious situations and circumstances in the last few years. And by the way, how is the documentary coming?
Yeah, we're still in the editing process, so you know how long that takes. Could be a month, could be a couple months, could be 3 months. I don't know. There's hopefully soon, but there's, it'll come out. It'll be out soon.
If you are just joining us on this edition of FYI, I'm speaking with UOR Paranormal Investigation founder, Mr. Greg Feynman. He's been most generous to spend some time with us, talking a little bit about cattle mutilations, Friends in the Sky, and other important artifacts that he has come up with and during his investigation time with UOR. Greg, what else would you like to share today, sir?
Well, I started bringing up fits, and there's a few things, and we could talk about this in another episode, but I've been learning how to talk to them telepathically, for the last year, and I've been isolated where it was just me and my thoughts pretty much. But they said that they can time travel, and that time travel is just accessing the Earth's recordings, is what they said. Now, we know that the Earth records because we have what's called residual hauntings. And a residual haunting is something that is a recording of something that plays over and over. It could be a guy grabbing his coat, going downstairs, and going to work every day. He did it for 40 years. He'd grab his coat, he'd go downstairs. Now, maybe this guy either loved to go to work or hated to go to work or whatever, but let's say that, he did it with a little more emotion, and because of that, it bleeds through. And the way I can explain it is you take a white piece of paper and you take an ink pen and you just write the word spirit on it. When you flip over the paper, you see nothing. All right? But you take a Sharpie. Now, the Sharpie represents anger, hate, love, whatever, and you write spirit on it. When you turn that paper over, it's bleeding through.
Yep.
Okay? And in the same way, that's our dimension. It's them bleeding through. And when you're looking at a residual haunting, you're looking into time.
That's an interesting analogy.
Haunting, that's what they told us. And I listen, I don't know this stuff. This is what they're telling me. I'm just repeating it. They said that our thoughts transcend dimensions, and that's how I'm able to talk to them. But they also told me one that I still haven't been able to wrap my head around. They said that our memories can be held interdimensionally. Now, the only thing I could think about that is that's why I don't remember any of the events. Nothing. I didn't remember getting taken the other day. Nothing. It was fuzzy. When I went to think back about what happened, I got like a blank spot when they told me I went missing. I can't make that stuff up. I don't know what to say to that. I was just as surprised as they were.
A lot of theories out there coming from possible satanic cults, UFOs, maybe just propaganda. But Greg, you've touched on something that no one else has touched on FYI. Very compelling, intriguing information, and your UOR Paranormal Investigation team, including yourself, has done a very credible job. And for our listeners today, what else would you like to share with our listeners, not only here, but in New Mexico?
Well, like I said, maybe next episode we can talk a little bit about telepathic communication and how all of us are wired for it.
Telepathy is very intriguing.
Yeah, and I've got we can talk a whole bunch about that because I've been learning how to talk telepathically for over a year now. And, it's about learning their voice, what their voices sound like when they come to you. And we'll talk about that.
Is that what you're focusing on right now? Or is there something else, the Miller Ranch that we spoke about in the first interview?
Right now, they've told me to to study the Bible, know God a lot better than I know Him, develop a relationship with Christ, and to just be patient. Because, like I said, life as we know it'll be different here shortly. And that's all I can say. That's what they're telling us. And, when you get that kind of information told to you, you kind of got to act on it. Because if you don't, what if Noah wouldn't have built the ark? So you got to act on it.
Greg Feynman, thank you so much again. God bless you. Appreciate you coming in today for our FYI edition. And you're always welcome back, sir.
Thank you. I love being here.
Okay. What I didn't get to talk about with Oma was their mid-tarsal break and what that's for. Now, we know that their arms are longer in proportion than the rest of their body. All right. And the deal is, when they really want to haul ass, when they really want to move, they drop down to all fours. And imagine if you drop down to all fours, how your toes and your balls of your feet would be touching the ground, and that's it. But if you had a joint in the middle of your foot where that mid-tarsal break is, you could have more of your foot on the ground to dig in to run. And that's why they've got it, so they can dig in and run really fast. All right, so that's the mid-tarsal break and what that's for. So I hope you enjoyed that. And stay tuned. There's always things that are developing around here, so stay tuned for the next video.